Hello, and welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're a pharmaceutical quality professional, a facility engineer, or honestly, anyone involved in sterile manufacturing, you already know that keeping contamination out of your product is the ultimate goal, right? Well, today we're focusing squarely on Module 4 of the EU GMP Annex 1 training. We're looking at practical compliance and the absolute essential building blocks of sterile manufacturing environments. Just to be clear up front, we aren't talking about gowning or utilities or water systems today. We are focusing strictly on the premises, how we classify them, and crucially, how we actually prove they work.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our agenda. 1. Cleanroom grades. 2. Particle limits. 3. Classification versus qualification. And 4. Airflow and control.
Right, Section 1. Cleanroom grades, matching environment to operation.
To start things off, we need to define the 4 distinct environments where our sterile operations actually happen. Think of it like a hierarchy of risk. We're moving from the lowest risk environment, grade D, which we'd use for handling components right after washing, up through grade C, where you might be preparing solutions that are going to be filtered later. Then we step up into grade B, which acts as that immediate, highly controlled background environment. And finally, we reach grade A. The crucial compliance takeaway for you here is that your chosen grade absolutely must perfectly match the operation's exposure risk. You simply cannot compromise on where those high-risk steps take place.
Let's move to and see how this builds when we isolate grade A, because this demands your utmost attention. This is the absolute critical zone. It's the space where the most high-risk operational steps happen. We're talking aseptic filling, making aseptic connections, handling stopper bowls, or dealing with open primary containers. Because the risk to the patient is at its absolute highest right here, the environmental controls have to be the strictest, utilizing unidirectional airflow to constantly, literally sweep potential contamination away from the exposed product.
Moving on to Section 2, particle limits, quantifying the environments.
So, now that we know the grades, we have to quantify them. This is Table 1, direct from Annex 1, setting out the maximum permitted airborne particle concentrations. Now, what's really interesting here is how the limits jump exponentially as you step outward from that critical zone towards grade D. I mean, just look at the in-operation column for particles at greater than or equal to 0.5 microns. Grade B jumps to over 350,000. Grade C jumps to over 3.5 million. And for grade D in operation, well, those limits aren't just a static number you can pull from a chart. They're actually set by your own contamination control strategy and quality risk management principles.
But I really want to spotlight this exact number right here, 3,520. To put that into perspective, a stationary person sheds about 100,000 particles every single minute. Yet, grade A uniquely holds a strict, unforgiving limit of just 3,520 particles at greater than or equal to 0.5 microns, both at rest and in operation. There's absolutely no leeway when people and machines start moving. This right here is the golden rule of Annex 1.
So, let's do a quick knowledge check straight from the training module. For grade A, what is the maximum permitted airborne particle concentration at greater than or equal to 0.5 microns? Just take a second and lock in your answer.
Spot on. The answer is 3,520 per cubic meter both at rest and in operation. The vital compliance takeaway to remember is that the critical zone must never degrade during active use. Since the product is fully exposed, the air quality has to remain utterly pristine, completely regardless of the activity happening within that zone.
Section 3, Classification versus Qualification, proving the environment works.
We're now addressing a very common and, quite frankly, very critical regulatory inspection trap, which is confusing classification with qualification. Now, classification simply uses particle counts to assign a grade, using defined ISO 1464-1 methods. It's really just determining the concentration of particles. Qualification, on the other hand, is the total comprehensive evidence set. So the crucial point is that particle counts alone merely classify a room, whereas qualification proves the room actually performs as intended by bringing airflow testing, recovery testing, filter integrity testing, and environmental monitoring into the mix. It's the whole shebang.
And of course, once a room is fully qualified, we don't just dust our hands off and walk away. We use ongoing monitoring, that routine particle and microbial data, to confidently confirm that the state of control is maintained during active production. Requalification, on the flip side, isn't something you do every day. It's a periodic testing regime triggered by specific time intervals, significant operational changes, or, adverse trends in your environmental monitoring data.
Let's test that understanding really quickly. Which statement best distinguishes cleanroom classification from qualification? Think about what an inspector is genuinely looking for when they ask for your qualification data versus just a classification report.
That's right. Classification assigns a grade based on particle data. Qualification is the full evidence set demonstrating the room actually performs as intended. If you're a QA professional or facility engineer tuning in, this should be your daily mantra. A clean room is qualified, not merely classified. Section 4. Airflow and Control. Maintaining the state of control.
So we've talked a lot about the metrics. Now let's look at the aerodynamic mechanics acting as your invisible physical barriers. First, grade A uses unidirectional airflow to constantly sweep contamination safely away from the product. Second, we use pressure cascades, and this brilliantly illustrates how cleaner rooms are always kept at a higher pressure than less clean rooms, meaning air only ever flows outwards, completely preventing the ingress of contaminants. Finally, in those non-unidirectional rooms, like grades B, C, and D, we rely on sufficient air change rates to continuously dilute and flush out airborne contamination.
But here is the massive catch. You absolutely cannot simply assume your unidirectional airflow is working perfectly just because the fan is humming along. It has to be proven, and that means conducting documented airflow visualization, which most of us in the industry call smoke studies. You literally have to visually demonstrate and record that the air is sweeping smoothly over those critical zones without any turbulence or dead spots that could harbor nasty contamination.
And right alongside airflow, we have recovery testing. This specific test confirms that the room actually bounces back and returns to its target cleanliness grade within a defined, acceptable time frame after a disturbance or contamination event. The compliance takeaway here is huge. Proving how quickly the air recovers is just as important to an inspector as your standard particle counts. It proves the system has the actual muscle to handle real-world operational disruptions.
Okay, let's pull all of this together. We've seen how grades A through D perfectly match environmental control to the operational risk. We've highlighted that grade A is incredibly uncompromising, holding the exact same particle limit at rest and in operation. We've separated the concepts of classification and qualification, noting that qualification demands a much broader, rigorous evidence set. And finally, we've outlined how unidirectional airflow, pressure cascades, and recovery rates act as the aerodynamic engines maintaining that vital state of control.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a thought to take back to your facility. If your ongoing monitoring suddenly shows a massive particle spike during filling, is it just a failure of classification, or does it point to a fundamental breakdown in your aerodynamic controls, your pressure cascades, or maybe even operator behavior? Understanding exactly how these compliance building blocks interact is the absolute key to real-world root cause analysis. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep those critical zones clean, and we will catch you next time.